picking the cartridge, because 10 millimeter has gotten pretty hot and people are just assigning it adequate bear medicine. Arguments to that are, well, it's still not enough. And then you compare it to something like 44 Magnum, which is a truly powerful round.
All right, what is up, everybody? Mark on the mic here, the all-seeing Ryan Muckenhirn across from me right now. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that we've got some guns and ammunition on the table. So today is a good day. We're talking about bear medicine today. Ryan, it is, it's spring at press time, about to be spring bear season.
In fact.
In a lot of states. Bears are bears, black bears is what we're talking about hunting. But sometimes these black bears inhabit what we like to call G-bear country, where it's nice to have maybe some backup.
Pack a big boy.
Pack a big boy. Maybe you're bow hunting.
Perhaps.
Maybe you are rifle hunting and you still want to have a sidearm with you, like, potentially, let's say you're successful in the spring or the fall, whatever you're hunting, and you've laid your rifle down, you're working on that animal, but you still want to have, a little firepower with you. A lot of discussion on what round is the best big bear medicine. So when I'm talking about big bears, I'm talking about grizzly bears, brown bears up north, which are basically the same thing, just, depends on where they live. And brown bears are typically much bigger because they have access to fish and things of that nature.
I'm reminded of a famous quote from a popular television sitcom, is what bears best? And then it was beats Bears Battlestar Galactica, but in fact it's what beats bears best in this case.
Yes, what beats bears best. The 10 millimeter. That's kind of like, maybe that might be kind of the focal point in some ways of this discussion, because the 10 millimeter is so hot right now.
A lot of folks talking about that.
For this application.
In fact.
Originally it was designed, I guess, not for this application. Well, no. It was for the FBI.
Law enforcement cartridge, yes.
And then did they do anything with it?
They shortened it.
Okay.
And then it became the 40 Smith & Wesson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And then everybody just shoots 9s now.
It would seem
not everybody.
Not everybody. But 9 millimeters, of course, and we've talked about this quite a bit here on the old Vortex Nation podcast, but 9 millimeters is a wildly and widely accepted law enforcement duty cartridge, personal defense cartridge, recreation cartridge. It's an old round. And a lot of popularity. We just had a spirited discussion with our good friends at Hornady about terminal ballistics and how
terminal ballistics for defensive handgun rounds. Yeah.
And 9 millimeters, I don't think going anywhere. 10 millimeter, I in the past couple of years here in the industry, I've seen a marketed resurgence in its popularity, specifically for hunting and bear defense. Yeah.
I got some printouts here.
I'm glad you brought some.
Yeah, I always bring them. Where do we want to start here?
Well,
I'm going to throw this out here. We've got, like I said, we've got some ammo. Kind of, you might be able to see it on the screen here. One, unfortunately absent. So I think the rounds we're going to talk about today, 9 mil.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a 9 mil.
Yeah.
357.
Yep.
10 millimeter. We actually have a 45 ACP here and 44 mag. Now there's bigger handguns.
Certainly.
Much bigger, really.
Yep.
But when you and I were talking about this, like, these rounds typically fit in the size of pistol that would be,
conducive to carry.
Conducive to carry. If I was, and actually I don't know, because I think we're going to get there through this exercise. But I could argue, like, well, if I was just fishing and I was on a river, and maybe I would pack something that's heavier, because I don't have as much gear. I'm not going as far. So maybe I would pack a bigger pistol for that application. But we're talking about hunting, like backcountry hunting, even front country day hunting.
I've never heard front country, but it makes sense. There's a back and there's a front.
Yeah.
Is there a middle country?
I don't know.
Interesting.
I think you might encounter the middle country whether you were front country or back country hunting.
Wow. You get
Eventually
there.
You may pass through the middle country.
Okay. I see where you're going, Mark. I don't have a good answer I guess I don't have a counter to that because I don't know that I disagree with that. Bring a bigger handgun when you're fishing. I don't even know where I'm at with respect to which arm do I choose as the bear defense, backcountry defense handgun. And I'm a bit all over the board on it. I have some theories.
I think that's what everybody has is theories, though. It's like there's not enough. It's not like you have like a sample size of 1,000. Maybe you do. Maybe this exists somewhere. I don't think it does. 1,000, grizzly and brown bears shot with handguns in defensive situations.
There actually is. Where
is this?
It's on the internet. You can find it. There's a study. It's a compilation of bear encounters in general and the handguns used in them by caliber. It's out there. It doesn't tell me necessarily the efficacy of that round.
Well, no, because, okay, I mean, what was the bear's demeanor? Where did where did it impact the bear? At what range? I mean, the variables are infinite.
Yes. So it's a very difficult thing to unpack and necessarily assign a winner to. I think there's some strategy in it, though, when we look at the individual cartridges and then what they're chambered in, how you'd carry them, and the merits of the whole system. I think you can come up with a reasonable and educated stance on it, depending on where your personal ethos on handguns falls.
I always get a little bit nervous when I talk to Pete down at Edge
because he's an imposing figure.
Well, yes, there's that. But he's all because we chat about this stuff, and then he's always like, "Well, I mean, handguns aren't really even that good at killing people."
That's true.
And I'm like, "Well, that doesn't give me a lot of confidence." And I'd say for me though, personally, and everybody has their personal strategy when it comes to what they're bringing in bear country. And I guess some of the stuff we're talking about today probably isn't a bad idea, even if you're just in, black bear country. But if I'm rifle hunting,
yep,
I feel like, okay, so I generally if I was rifle hunting, I'd have my rifle, which if I'm hunting in big bear country, I'm probably edging towards a round that's bigger than even possibly the game that I'm after.
Sure.
Right? I might be hunting deer that I could, dispatch handily, let's say with a 6.5 Creedmoor or something like that. But I'm going to have a little bit more gas. I'm also going to have bear spray.
Sure.
And then I'm likely to have a sidearm as well. And I feel like that gives you the flexibility to address like we talked about, the infinite scenarios that could arise from even maybe you have an incident where you have all three on you. Yeah. Maybe you have an incident, like I said, where you're field dressing an animal and you only have one of those things on you. So I'm going with all three. Yeah. Now, if I'm bow hunting, you have your bow, and I'm going to have bear spray and the pistol.
Of course. You're probably not going to use the bow as a primary defensive arm. Right.
Maybe right. Hold it up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Did we caveat this enough?
I think so. I want to say though, I'm not a bear expert. I've never been attacked by a bear.
No.
I've never seen a brown bear in the wild. I've seen lots, not a lot, but a handful of black bears. I've hunted black bear country. Mm-hmm. I've camped in brown bear, or grizzly bear country. Never encountered one. Bear sign? Never been in a fight with a bear. Just gonna say that right out.
Yes.
So everything I'm going to say today is going to be theoretical knowledge.
Same here.
Okay.
I am not a bear expert. I obviously didn't access the database that I just found out about that I actually probably will do right after this. I didn't know about it. Why didn't you tell me about it?
It's somewhat anecdotal, though, because, again, it doesn't tell me necessarily the outcome. Like, there was no necropsy done. I didn't learn, what necessarily killed it. How did it die? And like you said, the very important things, the demeanor, the distance, all the other exigent circumstances that go into this equation that would paint the picture of me of the efficacy of the chambering. It doesn't give me that.
There's a lot of gaps.
All I know is that there was a pistol used, it had a caliber, a cartridge associated with, and there was a bear involved. And that's all I got. So,
should we compare? So I've got in my printouts here, and I kept this to the brand Buffalo Bore.
Very commonly associated with backcountry expeditions.
Right.
They've carved a name out for themselves of making high proof ammunition.
A lot of kind of maximizing the oomph.
Yep.
And then at least in the rounds that I have here, it says strictly business right on it. These are for the 9 mil. This is the 9mm plus P Outdoorsman. And on the little Vortex block here, that's just come in quite handy. We're kind of the rounds that are end capping it, if you're watching on YouTube, I believe are both of that brand. I know this 9 on this end is, I got this one from Kenny. Kenny kind of keeps a sack of.
He's got a little, he's got a smattering
of things down there. So let's describe the projectile in both those.
Sure. So I don't have the ammunition box for the 44 Magnum loading, so I don't know specifically what it is, but the 9mm here is a 147 grain hard cast. And what we mean by hard cast is, so it's a lead bullet, but they've had a couple of alloys added to it, a lot of times referred to as antimony or tin, that increases the hardness of the projectile. Lead in itself is very soft. This makes it hard. It's 147 grain, so it's on the heavier side for 9mm. And it's moving pretty quick for 147 grain load. So 1,100 feet per second. It's putting out just shy of 400 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. So for contrast, when I was shooting a lot of multi-gun and USPSA competition, I shot 147 grain bullets, but I shot them anemically slow. So into the low 900s, just enough to make my gun function. And what I was after there was a smooth, soft shooting experience.
Right.
But I wanted enough mass in the projectile that if I hit a steel plate, I could knock it over. This is turning that up, adding 200 to 300 feet per second more, depending on the loading to it. So we're taking the mass into the equation, we're adding velocity into the equation, and we're making a pretty snoosy round. And we're also using a very tough bullet. Mm-hmm. So the idea behind this is we're not necessarily looking for any expansion at all. We're looking for penetrative ability in the projectile, the ability to go through bone, something that's not going to deflect as easily if we hit, say, the radius of a cranium. If we got to try to punch through a noggin, you stand a better chance with a harder bullet, and one that has that shape to the nose profile to do that, perhaps. And it's an uploaded round designed for things like this.
Yeah, I'd say in contrast, you referenced that podcast that we did with Jaden at Hornady on defensive handgun rounds, where I guess we were looking at the
personal protection and duty.
Personal protection and duty, where over penetration is what you are trying to avoid. I'd say not even, I won't call it over penetration. I'll say as much penetration as you can get.
Yes.
Is the goal with this style of round. You're not trying to, like you said, expansion, like you don't want anything slowing this thing down as it goes through.
I want that to track as straight and deep as possible. Yep. The idea here is if we have a large carnivore bearing down on us and we have a finite amount of time to engage, that as we're throwing rounds, probably not as accurately as we could, when we hit something, if it wasn't optimal, perhaps that projectile could penetrate through to something that was optimal to hit, cardiovascular tissue or bone structure that might incapacitate, or central nervous system stuff that would shut that threat down. And again, we're not worried about over penetration because we're in the outdoors, and the penetration will definitely be an asset here.
Right. I'm going to reiterate, some of this is just like, speculate. I'd say educated speculation. Sure. You're trying to make, like, neither of us have had experiences in this situation. Like, well, I can tell you what I did. And, and I'll say, like, I've got a lot of ideas too, but then to quote Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
I agree.
Which is why I like to carry, if I have the opportunity, 3 different options, because you kind of have the flexibility to do that. And in some ways, the pistol for me potentially is a last resort.
Sure.
The gun, maybe you got 1 round off with your rifle. Maybe you didn't. You got to the spray. Maybe you didn't. Potentially you are engaged with the bear in some capacity physically, and you still have your pistol on you and you can reach that. And maybe in that situation, I don't know, maybe you don't want to use your bear spray in that situation, because then you potentially spray yourself and now you're limiting.
You're done. You're just a seasoned sausage at that point.
But then I could argue, well, maybe you get both of you and he runs off and you've got burning eyes. I don't know.
Possibly. If you've never enjoyed OC spray,
yeah,
we hope he runs off.
I should also probably throw out, we'll probably do this in the copy as well. None of this, please consider all this information for the sake of discussion, and this is not our official advice on how you should react with a bear encounter.
Agreed.
Negative or otherwise.
Right.
I don't know if that covers. I'll ask.
I think so. It's like saying patent pending.
Yeah, I'll call Eddie. Let's compare this to the 10. There we go. Wait, hold on. We'll compare it to the 10. Maybe we'll compare all these to the 10.
Outstanding.
So the 10 millimeter heavy outdoorsman from Buffalo Bore, 220 grainer.
That's a pork chop for a 40 caliber projectile
versus the 147.
Yep.
703. Oh, excuse me. 1,200 feet per second. 703 foot-pounds of energy.
That's considerable.
Wait, how is this? Hold on, Ryan. Look at my printouts here. Please, let's look at these numbers. Yeah. It doesn't seem right to me.
Well, why not?
Because, never mind. I was looking at the wrong number.
Everything's checking out here, Mark.
Yeah, I was looking at the wrong number.
The 10 millimeter over the 9 millimeter, which is an increase in diameter of 1 millimeter. You're not double the mass. You're not quite double the foot poundage, but you're considerably higher. You're going from nominally 400 foot-pounds to 700, which is considerable. I mean, that's a big factor in the equation. And as you go up in caliber, right, you're going to, with the exception of perhaps 45 ACP, because actually 45 ACP is it's a pretty low pressure round. You can get them kind of hot. I've got some Buffalo Bore 45 at home, but it's not earth-shatteringly more.
So I was looking at those numbers and I was kind of like, I didn't print it off because I was like, and I probably should have, because enough people have 45s that might be the pistol that they had a field with. Sure.
Which is why I have Buffalo Bore for my 45 ACP. Let's see here if I might have some of that stocked away here. Yeah, so another, I think, important thing to talk about with this is, picking the cartridge, because 10 millimeter has gotten pretty hot and people are just assigning it adequate bear medicine.
Right.
And then arguments to that are, well, it's still not enough. And then you compare it to something like 44 Magnum, which is a truly powerful round. I mean, I'm sure you've got the printouts there for 44.
Well, and let's just remove these two middle ones, and you just kind of look at it. Compare the 9 to the 44, and they're very different.
Yes, correct. 44 Magnum is a very formidable round, and it does edge out even some centerfire rifle cartridges for energy numbers and things like that. And of course, it's going to bring a lot of mass too, and you can get some very heavy bullets in the 44 Magnum chambering from Buffalo Bore and from other companies that are making high test stuff. So go ahead and let's read out what we have here.
So this is the Buffalo Bore heavy 44 Magnum plus P plus 340 grain hard cast, 1,425 feet per second. 1,533 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. And oftentimes we use muzzle velocity when talking about rifle cartridges, and that's kind of like the baseline thing that we look at. But we also extrapolate those things out to at distance, because we're looking at things like energy at say 600 yards and wind deflection, drop. With these rounds though, like the muzzle velocity is really all I'm interested in, because whatever I'm shooting at and care about stopping the threat will not be far from the muzzle.
No, it's going to be close, right?
It's really the only number you need to look at.
Yeah, I would agree. Muzzle energy and muzzle velocity, correct. We're not worried about trajectory at this point at all, right? So if you're engaging a threat like this at a distance with a handgun, I'm not saying you're doing it wrong. There's probably a better tool. Maybe your archery hunting is the only thing you have, and that threat is something that you have to engage at distance. Maybe you're hunting with a buddy, and your buddy is...
okay, sure. Yeah. There you go.
But it would be like an odd thing to talk about in the... I guess in the equation, right? So yeah, you're right. I don't really care about trajectory. I don't care about drop, anything like that. So here's the here if I'm a 45 ACP loading, 255 grain hard cast flat nose, 484 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, 925 feet per second, and so it's not light years above what of regular 230 grain round ball is usually going to put us out in a 45 ACP, but it's something. It's definitely an advantage. You're getting into a new weight class there at 255. You're getting into some extra foot-pounds of energy, perhaps, and I don't think it's a bad choice. But to address, I think, a really important talking point here and on the topic specifically is, okay, so if you're going to...
Can I just say, I'm just going to compare it to the 10 real quick.
Yeah.
We kind of keep reiterating the same numbers, but kind of bringing it back to the 10. 1,425 feet per second, 1,200 feet per second, 1,533 foot-pounds, 703.
Double the energy.
Double the energy.
In the 44 Magnum.
A little bit more than double.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Significant.
Yes. The question is it enough? And that's a very, I think, undefinable thing, because we still kill.
Are any of these enough?
Here's my argument. We still kill things with archery tackle every single year. People kill brown bears, black bears, grizzly bears, polar bears with bows and arrows, and they do it with outstanding efficiency. And so what's the difference here? How much energy is a bow putting out? 50, 60 foot-pounds?
Right.
At target? That's not the point of the archery equipment. That's not necessarily how it's doing it, right? But it still works. I don't know that it would be my choice in a breathing distance engagement, but it still works. So I think if we're going to say, like, is 10 millimeter enough? I suppose it depends on what your take is on what is enough and what you can handle. And that's where I really get kind of fired up about this. So when we look at the 44 Magnum on paper, of course, it's very appealing. It's got a ton of power. Something to consider, though, with that is we're talking about, all things removed, a defensive situation. So we have to be able to take the thing that chambers that round, and we have to engage that target, probably in succession, round over round over round. And all that foot-pounds of energy may be for naught, and all that velocity may be for naught if we can't hit what we're trying to shoot. So there's a couple things that come into this, right? So let's take the 9. I'm just going to set it down here. We're going to look at the 10. We don't have a 44 Magnum here yet. Kind of want one. So
yeah.
Maybe I'll pick one up. Weapon's clear. I'm going to take the magazine out just in case. Visual inspection of the chamber. There's nothing in there. Okay. Semi-automatic pistol. This is a Glock Model 40, so it is the long slide version of the 10. Mark and I had a pre-podcast debate over whether or not somebody goes with the Model 40 or goes with the Model 20, which is the standard barrel length. Personally, I'm in the camp of go with the 20.
I would as well, which is the shorter version.
Correct, yeah. So it would be, if you're watching on YouTube, it would be flush with the frame here. So there's where the dust cover ends and barrel would go to here. Very popular pistol for a long time. Versus, say, a Smith & Wesson L frame or a large frame revolver. The one that I'm courting is a Smith & Wesson 329 PD. So it's a shorter barreled 44 Magnum, scandium alloy frame. It's very lightweight. It's actually in a similar weight class to the 20 and 40.
Okay.
With all of those things that we talked about, though, here's what I've got with the 20. I think that is a major talking point. This magazine holds 15 rounds of 10 millimeter. It's also semi-automatic, which I think is pretty neat. Technically, a double action revolver could be looked at as semi-automatic, but with this system, I'm mitigating recoil. Not all of it, but I'm turning it down quite a bit in comparison, right? With the Glock Model 20 and the Glock Model 40, 15 rounds on tap, 6 rounds on tap in the 44 Magnum.
Right.
I am going to increase recoil considerably by going to the 44 Magnum. So here's my question. What is better in the hand? One that I could put, of the 15 rounds in the magazine, potentially all of them in a vital zone in rapid succession, or with a 44 Magnum, and especially in that 329 PD that I'm looking at, do I get 1 in a good spot? Maybe 2 in a good spot?
Maybe 0.
How fast can I pull a double action trigger that's pretty heavy and has a very long cycle on it and control that recoil and put them on target?
And is likely, if you do carry dissimilar from the gun that you are probably most familiar with.
I've got a few revolvers, so
Which one do you carry?
If I carry a revolver, I carry a Smith & Wesson.
No. What gun do you carry?
On a daily basis, I carry a Glock. Right. But I'm versed in Smith & Wesson.
You are.
lingo. Right. But it's a good point. So it's very identical format. The controls are identical to my everyday carry pistol. They're identical in format to the pistol that I used in competition for many years. So to Mark's point, absolutely. If I was blindfolded and hung upside down, I could take the gun apart and put it back together.
I watched you do it one-handed before we started here.
So that's a significant thing, right? But my worry is you can have all that muzzle energy, all that muzzle velocity in the world in even a portable package like the 329 PD, for instance. But my God, is it hard to shoot well.
Right.
And I'm certain that there are going to be folks that say, well, if you train and you train and you train, you can absolutely get it. And that's true. You can learn to shoot a big gun very well. I can learn how to shoot a lighter recoiling gun faster. And that's probably an undeniable truth. And this is why we see a lot of law enforcement agencies getting away from the 10, going to the 40, going away from the 40 and going to the 9, because their officers could get better quicker and better. And that's a very important thing, is better with that lower recoiling system.
Well, any of these rounds only matter if they go where you want them to go.
Correct. So my personal theory on this is I'd rather have something that I can shoot rapidly, accurately, and is also reliable. And so folks out there who are looking at a system like the Glock or a 1911 or a SIG 220 or whatever 10 millimeter system or 9 millimeter 45 or whatever in a semi-automatic platform, yes, there are concessions that you would make to potential reliability, right? Worst thing that could happen is you have this rig and you've got your pistol in your holster, whether it's on your chest or whether it's on your hip belt, and you accidentally depress the magazine release button, which doesn't take a lot of force, and you pop your magazine out. Well, now we've got 1 round in the gun. That's fairly useless, right? So you have 1. You had 15, now you have 1. Yep, that's very true. These guns, if we push them up against a hard surface, like, say, the chest of a bear, and we knock them out of battery, they don't go bang, right? So that's also something to worry about. My counter to that is take your revolver, and I'm a big fan of revolvers, and I have revolvers, and pull the hammer back and let me pinch your cylinder. Just let me hold it in place and then try to fire it. The gun doesn't index, the gun doesn't fire. You can't make it work. Well, if the hammer was back, it would probably go. But you can't make it work from double action if I just put 2 fingers on the cylinder. So I can fail a revolver as well, right? I still think that this is a remarkable solution to this problem. And I think that 5 on the pie plate beats 1 near the pie plate when we're talking about rounds on target being effective. I'd rather have 5 rounds that are half the energy in the right spot than 1 round maybe makes it to the right spot. Mm-hmm. I just think that's better, right? But big word is there. I think that's better.
I think probably because I'm a visual person, maybe.
Yeah.
and we didn't have that 357 up here. We didn't talk about the energies of the 357, so we should probably compare that one as well. So this is the heavy 357 mag Outdoorsman, Buffalo Bore, 180 grainer, 1,400 feet per second, 783 foot-pounds.
Yep. So we've got a little bit higher impact velocity than the 10 millimeter, but we've got lower mass.
Lower mass. So the foot-pounds are
slightly higher.
Slightly higher, but still, 703 in the 10 versus the 783 in the 357. So
they're not the same, but they're pretty darn equal.
Yeah.
Is the 10 millimeter option better there, considering the platform? You can get a 10 millimeter revolver. You can get a 357 Magnum semi-automatic handgun. Both of these are kind of outliers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a Kunin 357 or you have a Smith & Wesson Model 610. Probably an oddity on either end, right?
We were podcasting with Jerry Micklick a while back.
Yep.
Renowned competitive shooter. Excellent pistol shot. He was singing the praises of the 357.
Mm-hmm. Very good round. Absolutely.
But when I look at it, when we're looking at all these things on paper, more, yes, but like you said, considering the platforms you're likely to find it in, I'm going to take more in the mag and the autoloader.
And I would agree. I mean, you can get some higher capacity wheel guns. Like you can get an 8-round 357.
Right.
7-round 357. 6 is very common, depending on what frame of gun you get. And certainly more is better, I think. But I really do look at the auto pistol, and I'll almost say any chambering 9 millimeter or greater as a pretty viable tool. And again, I think for me, it really comes down to what can I do on target under duress? How many of them can I put there? Yes, I would prefer to be able to pull the hammer back, go to a single action mode, and take a very well targeted shot with the energy that the 44 Magnum delivers, because I think that's going to be a wildly effective solution. I doubt I'm going to have that opportunity if placed there. And so with that, I'd be like, how much control can I have? I want the most control. How much capacity can I have? I want the most capacity. Then, let the trigger presses take care of the rest. I don't think a 9 millimeter would be a terrible thing to have. I don't.
Right, wrong, or otherwise, that's what I brought to Alaska last year.
Sure.
It's what I had.
And aside from the effectiveness...
And it was my plan C.
Sure. Aside from the effectiveness of the cartridge, and its muzzle energy and muzzle velocity, carrying the thing, accessing the thing, how do you do that and make it an effective tool? Like, the one you have is great. Like, it's better to have than not. But if you can't get to it, get it out of its holster or container, whatever means you're carrying it in, it's just weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like bear spray is a very comforting thing. Unless you've got like a doodad that you have to open up, you have to pull it out, you have to pull a safety pin, you have to point and engage. Is that better or worse than a handgun? I don't know. How's your handgun carried?
It's probably a whole nother podcast.
I think so.
I've got one example right here.
Sure.
But I think there are definitely others, and I think they all have their merit in some way.
Sure.
This is, pull the chamber flag here. Gun is empty. Mag is empty. Visual inspection. Reinsert empty mag. I really do like this holster.
It's a nice holster. Very well
so
built.
that was just on the hip belt of my Stone Glacier pack.
Sure.
Carried very comfortably.
Sure.
And I always felt like I did have really positive access to it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one thing, you shoot a lot more pistol you have in your life and just in general than I do. I just don't. And it's one of those things you should do more, right? If you're going to carry a pistol, you should shoot it a lot more. I don't. But I also feel like there's probably a lot of people in the same boat as me as well.
I agree.
That are probably going, yeah, I'm kind of the same in that department.
Mm-hmm.
Which was another reason why I actually did feel more comfortable with this pistol, because it's the one that I've shot the most, and I'm the most comfortable using. I didn't want to have something different and kind of be a little bit of a fish out of, oh, it's got more energy, it's got this. But again, it doesn't matter if the rounds aren't going where you want them to go.
Right.
Or I fumble with it because of unfamiliarity. And again, that's the responsibility of the shooter, right?
Yep.
That's my responsibility.
Right. But I think something like this offers the shooter a better form factor, more portable, accessible form factor. And like on the wild end of the spectrum, I think of like a pistol like a Taurus Raging Bull, or I think of a Smith & Wesson X-frame, something chambered in 500 Smith or 460 Smith, something like that, or a 454 Casull in a Raging Bull. And these are huge pistols.
Right.
Huge pistols. Revolver, excuse me. Where do you put them? Do you put them in a cross-draw Kenai rig? Is that accessible, comfortable, and something that you can wear throughout the duration of your hunt without it being a burden? Do you put them on your hip? We're looking at
such a burden that on day 2 you go, I'm not going to carry this thing anymore.
Right, and then why did you have it?
Well, and you were talking, maybe even brought this up, but just even the barrel length, right? Like
sure.
Drawing.
Yep.
We were talking about this beforehand, even because we're looking at this
Model 40 here.
Model 40 with the little bit longer barrel. You
have a longer draw cycle here because that barrel's longer. Like you can clear leather, so to speak, quicker with a shorter barrel, right? And if you have a large format revolver like a Raging Bull or like an X-frame, and you've got to clear a lot of barrel, and they do make shorter versions of the X-frame. Like you can get a short barrel 500 Smith & Wesson and a short barrel 460, but they're massive otherwise. I mean, their cylinders are huge. They're not quite as big as the end of my coffee cup here, but they're probably not far off of the bottom of my coffee cup. Like they're just a lot of mass to contend with while it's hanging on your person. Your holster options are more limited. Where you can place the pistol on you or the revolver on you is also a concession or a consideration to make. Like you had mentioned, you had looped yours through the webbing on your belt, on your hip belt. It's a convenient spot. I mean, like normally I run a pouch on either side of my hip belt. I would delete one of those pouches from my hip belt.
That's what I ended up doing, yeah.
Right. There's also like the Rasco holsters that go under a lot of popular binocular harnesses that the pistol resides underneath your bino pouch.
Almost like,
yeah,
get one, but it would like almost.
Yeah, it would hang out here, and then your pistol would go into that. And then there's like the popular Kenai rigs that are kind of a cross draw. They go to the side. Your bino pouch goes forward here. And the larger the format and frame of that pistol or revolver you have, the harder it is to make that work in a lot of different places. And so I don't think that, like you said, you were wrong going with a 9mm on Kodiak when you were hunting, because one in the hand is better than none in the hand. I think the way that you were carrying it was brilliant because you often always had your pack on. And then you often, if you didn't have your pack on, had your spray with you.
Right.
I think you could have doubled down. And what I will probably do if I ever make that hunt is I'm going to remove this backer plate here. I'm going to put like a Safariland QLS system on there. I'm going to have a clip on my pack, and I'm going to have a clip on my waist belt, like on my pants. So if I dismount my pack, I can dismount my holster and clip it in, and then I have it at the ready to go. But either way, right? You're not having to fumble around with a giant wheel gun in order to have it accessible, and you don't have to worry about clearing your holster with this huge thing. And then you had 15 rounds on tap if you needed it, and pretty fast and accurate with it if need be. And I think that's a good way to go.
I did feel like I had like a very like positive draw when I was practicing with it. Like it had enough tension that I wasn't like struggling to get it out. I mean, you.
Yep.
So I liked that aspect of it. But it's a very interesting conversation.
It is.
And it's one that I, knock on wood, got this nice wood table that MC Ryan built, I think. We always say, Brian, did you build this one or
it
you
was
built
that,
the
it
other
was that,
one?
it was the other
It's the other one on the other
Yeah.
side of the room. The footstool, though, he did.
Yeah.
It's like,
Major component.
I lost track. Oh, it's a situation. Hopefully I never find out.
Correct. I agree.
Hopefully I never know.
I agree. But it's something that you can certainly practice. Maybe we should practice it.
It's a very solid thought. I mean, we were talking about the discussion of, like, you can look all my printouts, all my paper, my energies, my foot pounds, my what happens when you put it into practice? Like we talked about earlier, you've shot a lot of handgun, autoloader, revolver, 9 mils to bigger bore handguns. I've done a lot less. Are you able to take a 44 and put all 6, on target, in some sort of state of duress?
Maybe.
Maybe. Am I not able to, at my current level, you might decide that, maybe I won't carry a 44. I can, dump 6 and they're all going where I want them to go. Fantastic. I might be like, yeah, one in the dirt, one,
Right.
And then making things up, but maybe I got 4,
Sure.
with the 9. Okay.
Yeah. I'm reminded of, there's a video out there, Bryce Towsley taking a Freedom Arms single action revolver in .454 and doing a rapid fire drill at very close distance with that gun. I don't know that he was necessarily fanning the hammer, but he did a really good job. And I have to ask him, was it somewhat satirical, or was this like hey, you can do it if you can hold on to it? He got 5 off very quickly. Bryce is very good at big guns, so you could practice up. I think you can get better faster with something like this, even your 19 there. And I still don't think that that's a bad choice. When I started hunting the West, I hunt in lion country quite a bit, and I thought mountain lions were going to be a way bigger deal than they were. When you're a kid, you're worried that a mountain lion's going to drag you off into the night and put you in a tree.
Sure.
Now I'm not so concerned about it. I used to carry a Glock with a weapon light on it and an external holster.
Did you watch the Ghost in the Darkness before?
I have, yeah. The Lions of Tsavo there. Now I carry my 43X just like I regularly carry, and I don't even think about it. Yeah. I'm not so concerned about mountain lions anymore, but I also wouldn't feel up a tree with a 19 or a 43X on my hip if I was in big bear country, knowing that I can shoot it really well and knowing that it's a better deterrent than nothing, and it's a better deterrent than one I can't shoot well, despite its horsepower. So I think the 10's a fantastic middle ground.
My hope always, when I think about this topic as well, is that just the report, the noise
is a deterrent in itself.
Has some sort of
hit, miss, or otherwise.
Hit, miss, or otherwise.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah.
But I'll say this. My brother and I were in Kodiak, and we're trying to get a bear to move off. It wasn't being aggressive. It was just where we needed to be, and it wasn't leaving. And so we torched off around behind it in the rocks, safely behind it in the rocks. And it casually looked our direction and moseyed off. It left.
Oh, that's unnerving.
But it also didn't really care that much.
So I got a couple of tags I apply for in, as described to me, grizzly highways and
hopefully,
corridors.
Maybe that's not what you should do. Maybe we're conditioning that bear to,
perhaps.
So.
I always wonder, how the hell am I going to sleep when they're just out there doing stuff? Maybe I'll sleep good. But I doubt it. A little thin tent, just a layer of Dyneema separating you from gnashing teeth.
I think you need to do everything you can do to prevent an incident, and then part of it you just have to accept where you are.
I understand.
Easier said than done.
In fact.
And also, when I've hunted in brown bear country, which is just a couple times, generally trying to hunt critters that live up high during a time when hopefully the big bears are down low on the fish. I will say on this most recent trip, which surprised me, I wasn't there when it happened. Brad Brooks from Argali was in camp, and we did have a brown bear come down the ridge that we were camped on. Got to, I think, about 100 yards or 200 yards, maybe 150 yards, and Brad was able to, he yelled at the bear. The bear, moved off, which is the exact result. You're like, oh, thank goodness, But I was surprised because there was a lot of fish down low. There was a lot of berries up high, but there was a lot of fish down low. And I would just think that, from a food perspective, like the the fish is the higher reward.
Sure.
But we did have one,
Came to steal your picnic basket.
Yeah. So.
I'm glad that worked out. No incidents occurred. I was thinking about you guys the whole time.
But eventually, like we came up from the ocean, right? Eventually, you're down low sometimes. And we saw some bears down low. We saw a fair amount of bears down low. Nothing super close, which was good. But yeah, I don't know.
Spooky.
Knock on wood. I don't even like talking about it.
Let's load some magazines and some cylinders.
We're gonna need a few more guns.
We have the means.
It'd be interesting to take, these calibers that we've talked about today and just kind of like check your level of proficiency.
Yep.
From, how long it takes you to draw, how long it takes you to fire your first shot, how many impacts on target in an acceptable, grouping, if you will. We can do moving targets down there.
We do have capacity. That. Yeah. We have chargers and we have runners. The
chargers aren't like super crazy fast.
No, but
I think they're
pretty quick if they need to be. You can run about 7 to 10 miles an hour.
And then, depending on your performance at 7 to 10 miles an hour, you can maybe extrapolate that out to a bear that's potentially moving a lot faster than that.
Like double that speed.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you always have, like I said, how much time are you going to have?
I mean, there's no rules.
No.
Right? Like you said, maybe the first shot, that thing hesitates. Whoa, hey, look, I just come to say hello and check you out. Not here for a fight.
I think, in some scenarios, you have zero time.
Yeah. We'll find out.
Well, I think that's a good idea.
Cool.
We'll start working on that.
I think you're going to find this Glock Model 20 and Model 40 system quite pleasant to shoot, even with
comparatively to some other options. Yeah.
Like my Magnum Research BFR, which is a 44 Magnum. It's a big gun, full frame gun. It's a hunting revolver with high test loads in it. Is not fantastic to shoot. Nothing fast about it. Peace of mind, perhaps, but in application, I'd still rather have a 9 or a 10 or a 40, 357 SIG.
Interesting.
Yeah, 45 Super.
We didn't even talk about that one.
It's kind of it's one of those outliers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a Glock Model 21. It's 45 ACP. Shoots very well. It's very soft. Even with the buffalo bore stuff, it's surprising.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know it's an interesting topic to think about.
Oh yeah.
And then potentially put into some sort of practicing. It'll at the minimum it'll be good practice.
Yeah.
I think we've decided that we're going to do a little bit of this. I'd be curious for the listeners out there, like, do you want us to do a little bit more work on this topic? What are you carrying as a sidearm in the woods for big bear protection? Have you been? Have you had an incident?
Yeah.
What's your experience? Like I said, we're speaking on no real world experience.
Yeah, as a Wisconsinite, I don't have that problem.
No. Yet.
No.
Yeah. Do you want to hear more?
Yes.
Let us know.
10 likes.
We might 10 likes, as Ryan likes to say.
10 likes and we do this.
Yeah. I'm kind of closing this out because I'm mentally crafting what we might do here. So
I've got a fun idea for targets.
Okay. Well, let's save it then.
I will.
Tune in for Ryan's fun idea on targets. Again, let us know. What are you doing for big bear protection with a sidearm or otherwise? And until then, don't let the bear catch you, and we'll catch you on the next one.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.